Left to itself, operational time in an industrial setting is continuous motion. A factory floor or transport fleet operates as a relentless sequence of actions, devoid of inherent boundaries or natural pauses. Statutory labor standards reject this unstructured view. The law does not recognize a blur of continuous work. It imposes a mathematical grid over every minute an employee is on the clock. The logic for this grid is found in Chapter 7 of the Occupational Safety, Health, and Working Conditions Code. Under this legal framework, raw time is categorized. Every minute of a worker's presence must be assigned to a specific state, to standard duty, to compensated overtime, to prescribed rest, or accrued leave liability. This system defines the requirements for maintaining a legally compliant operation throughout the work year. Sections 25 and 26 establish the standard work limits, 8 hours in a day and 6 days in a week. These limits form a hard border. When an employer requires a worker to cross these boundaries, Section 27 triggers an immediate mandate for overtime pay. The financial consequence is precise. Any excess time worked mandates a compensation rate of twice the standard wage. The code also builds in a specific advantage rule. Overtime is calculated on a daily or weekly basis, whichever method yields a more favorable financial result for the worker. Employers cannot deploy this mechanism at will. Overtime requires the active consent of the worker, and total excess hours remain subject to maximum caps prescribed by the government. Standard working hours act as a ceiling. Leveraging operational time beyond that ceiling transforms standard labor into a premium liability. Static 8-hour blocks fail to capture continuous, mobile operations. In sectors like motor transport, work is a fragmented series of events. This linear Gantt chart maps out how Section 25(1) parses a transport worker's day, fracturing a single shift into highly distinct legal states. The primary state is running time. This is the actual functioning time of the transport vehicle, excluding any prescribed rest intervals where the crew is free to dispose of their time. Adjacent to this is subsidiary work. These are the non-driving operational tasks, handling cash, signing registers, garaging the vehicle, and managing the loading or unloading of freight. Finally, the code defines mere attendance. This covers time spent remaining at a post waiting for calls or scheduled duty. To qualify as mere attendance rather than compensable work, the period must be less than 15 minutes. The code carves out bespoke frameworks for other specific professions. Working journalists, for instance, are bound by a limit of 144 hours of work measured across 4 consecutive weeks. Similarly, persons employed below ground in mines operate under restricted shift arrangements that prohibit any underground presence outside of their recorded work periods. By imposing this granular time taxonomy across different industries, the statute prevents employers from absorbing unpaid labor inside operational gray areas like waiting, vehicle maintenance, or shift prep. Continuous industrial operations frequently rely on 24-hour night shifts that sever the connection between work hours and standard calendar days. This creates a compliance problem. If a worker is entitled to a 24-hour weekly rest day, the statute must calculate that period even when a single shift bridges midnight and splits across 2 dates. This time block illustrates the Section 28 Midnight Protocol, which dictates how to measure shifts that extend beyond 12 a.m. The rule relies on biological reality rather than the calendar. The mandatory 24-hour consecutive rest period begins at the moment the shift ends. The hours worked after midnight count toward the previous day's shift. To maintain the integrity of these shift boundaries, Section 29 prohibits overlapping relays. Multiple groups of workers cannot be engaged in the same kind of work at the same time, preventing the use of overlapping rosters to hide excess hours. Furthermore, Section 30 establishes a 12-hour buffer, prohibiting an employee from working in a mine or factory if they have already worked in a similar establishment within the preceding 12 hours. Through these specific mechanisms, biological rest requirements and shift boundaries legally supersede the standard calendar day. While shifts are managed daily, Section 32 governs leave accrual across the full calendar year. This 365-day calendar grid tracks the qualifying period. An employee must complete 180 days of service within a calendar year before they become eligible to accrue annual leave. The statute accounts for specific edge cases within this period. Days spent on layoff, maternity leave, or prior annual leave count toward reaching the 180-day requirement, though those specific days do not generate leave credits themselves. Once that service requirement is met, accrual begins at a rate of 1 day of leave for every 20 days worked. Adolescent workers and persons employed below ground in mines accrue leave at a different rate, 1 day for every 15 days worked. If an employee joins mid-year, they qualify for accrual if they work for 1/4 of the remaining days in that calendar year. The law treats annual leave as an earned liability, contingent on sustained operational service. As the calendar year closes, the statute dictates what happens to an employee's unused leave to prevent indefinite corporate liability. This interface tracks the carry-forward limit. Employees can roll unused leave into the succeeding year, but the law caps rollover at 30 days. Any accrued leave exceeding that 30-day cap triggers the liquidation protocol, entitling the worker to financial encashment for those excess days. If an employment relationship ends, whether the worker resigns, is terminated, retires, or dies, all accrued leave converts into cash compensation, calculated based on the employee's daily wages. The payout timelines for separation are rigid. If an employee quits or is discharged, the accrued cash value must be paid before the expiry of the second working day. In the event of death, the payment must clear within 2 months. Chapter 7 operates as a closed-loop system. Every minute of labor is systematically tracked, bounded by mandatory rest, or ultimately converted into settled financial liability.